This feels good. Come here inside, ladies.
Now, Mr. Hale, before we move things about, you explained to Mr. Henderson just what you saw when you came here yesterday morning.
By the way, has anything been moved? Are things just as you left them yesterday?
It's just the same. When it dropped below zero last night, I thought I'd better send Frank out this morning to make fire for us. No use having pneumonia with a big case on. But I told him not to touch anything except the stove. And you know, Frank.
Somebody should have been left here yesterday.
Oh, yesterday, when I had to send Frank to Morris Center for the man who went crazy, I want you to know that I had my hands full.
Well, Mr. Hale, tell now, just what happened when you came here yesterday morning?
Harry and I had started to town. We came along the road from my place.
And as I got here, I said, I'm going to see if I can't get John Wright to go in on a party telephone. I spoke to Wright about it once, and he put me off, saying folks talked too much anyway, and all he asked was peace and quiet. I guess you know about how much he talked himself, but I thought maybe if I went to the house and talked about it before his wife, though I said to Harry that
I didn't know what his wife wanted made so much difference to John.
Let's talk about that later, Mr. Hale. I do want to talk about that, but tell now just what happened when you got to the house.
I didn't hear or see anything. I knocked at the door, and still, it was all quiet inside.
I knew they must be up. It was past 8 o'clock, so I knocked again. And I thought I heard somebody say, "Come in." I wasn't sure. I'm not sure yet. But I opened the door.
And there, on that wrapper, exactly his right.
What was she doing?
She was rocking back and forth. She had her apron in her hands and was kind of pleating it.
And how did she look?
Well, she looked queer.
What do you mean queer?
Well, as if she doesn't know what she was going to do next and was kind of done up.
And how did she seem to feel about your coming?
Why, I don't think she minded, one way or other. She didn't pay much attention.
I said, "How do, Mrs. Wright? It's cold, ain't it?" And she said, "Is it?" And went on kind of pleating at her apron. Well, I was surprised. She didn't ask me to come up to the stove or to sit down, but just sat there, not even looking at me. So I said, "I want to see John." And then she laughed. I guess you wouldn't call it a laugh. I thought of Harry and the team outside, so I said a little sharp, "Can't I see John?" "No," she says, kinda dull-like. "And why can't I see him?" I ask her, out of patience. "'Cause he's dead," says she. "Dead? Why? Where is he?" says I, not knowing what to say. She just pointed like that. "Why? What did he die of?" "He died of a rope round his neck," says she. I just went on pleading at her apron.
Well, I went out and called Harry. I thought I might need help. We went upstairs, and there, he was lying.
I think I'd rather have you go into that upstairs where you can put it all out. Just go on with the rest of the story.
Well, my first thought was to get the rope off. It looked...
But Harry, he went up to him and said, "No, he's dead alright." So we went back downstairs. She was still sitting that same way. "Has anybody been notified?" I asked. "No," says she, unconcerned. "Who did this, Mrs. Wright?" says Harry. "I don't know," she says. "You don't know?" says Harry. "No," says she. "Weren't you sleeping in the bed with him?" says Harry. "Yes," says she. "But I was on the inside." "Somebody slipped a rope round his neck and strangled him, and you didn't wake up?" says Harry. "I didn't wake up," she said after him. We must look as if we didn't see how that could be, for after a minute she said, "I sleep sound."
Harry was about to ask for more question, but I said we ought to tell the coroner first, or the sheriff. So we went as fast as he could to River's place, where there's the telephone.
And what did Mrs. Wright do when she knew you have gone for the coroner?
She moved from that chair to this one over here.
And just sat there, with her hands held together and looking down. I got a feeling that I ought to make some conversations, so I said I had come in to see if John wanted to put in a telephone. And at that, she started to laugh. And then she stopped and looked at me.
I guess we should go upstairs first and out to the barn and around there. You're convinced that there's nothing important here, nothing that would point to any motive.
Nothing here but kitchen things.
Here's a nice mess.
Oh, her fruit! It did freeze. She worried about that when it turned so cold. She said that fire'd go out and her jars would break.
Oh, can you get the women? Held for murder and worrying about her preserves.
I suppose before we're through, she's going to have more serious things to worry about than her preserves.
Well, women are used to worrying over trifles.
And yet, with all their words, what would we do without ladies? Dirty towels. Not much of a housekeeper, would you say, ladies?
There's a great deal of work to be done on a farm.
To be sure. And yet, I know some Dixon County farmhouses who doesn't have such a, towels.
Men's hands aren't always as clean as they might be.
Loyal to your sex, I see. You and Mrs. Wright were neighbors. I suppose you were friends too.
Well, I haven't seen her lately. It's been more than a year since I've been in this house.
And why is that? You don't like her?
I liked her all well enough, but
Yes?
this never seemed a very cheerful place.
No, it's not. I shouldn't say she had the homemaking instinct.
Well, I don't know what's right hand either.
You mean they don't go along very well?
No, I don't mean anything. But I don't think any place would be any cheerfuler for John Wright's being in it.
I'd like to talk about that a little later. I want to get the lay of things upstairs now.
I suppose anything Mrs. Peters will do shall be alright. She has to take in some clothes for her, you know, and a few little things too. We left in such a hurry yesterday.
Yes, I'd like to see what Mrs. Peter thinks. And Mrs. Peters, keep an eye out on anything that would be of use to us.
Yes, Mr. Henderson.
I'd hate to have men coming into my kitchen, snooping around and criticizing.
Of course it's no more than their duty.
Judy's alright, but I guess the deputy sheriff has got a little of this on. Wish I thought of that sooner. Seems mean to talk about her for not having things lit up when she had to come away in such a hurry.
She had bread sent.
She was going to put this there. It's a shame about her fruit. I wonder if it's all gone. Oh. This is Cherry's too. I declare I believe this is the only one left. She'll feel awful bad about her hard work in the hot weather.
Well, I must get those things from the front room closet. You coming with me, Mrs. Hale? You could help me carry them. My, it's cold in there.
Right was close. I think maybe that's why she kept so much to herself. Then you don't enjoy things where you feel shabby. She didn't even belong to the Ladies' Aid. She used to wear pretty clothes and be lively when she was Minnie Foster, one of the town girls singing in the choir. But that was 30 years ago. So you had to take in?
She said she wanted an apron. Funny thing to want, for there isn't much to get you dirty in jail, goodness knows. But I suppose just to make her feel more natural. She said they was in the top drawer in this cupboard. Yes, here. And the little shawl that always hung behind this door. Yes, here it is.
Mrs. Peters,
Yes, Mrs. Hale?
do you think she did it?
Oh, I don't know.
Well, I don't think she did. Asking for her apron and her little shawl, worrying about her food.
Mr. Peters says it looks bad for her. Mr. Henderson is awful sarcastic in his speech, and he'll make fun of her saying she didn't wake up.
Well, I don't think John Wright woke up when they were slipping that rope on his neck.
No, it's strange. It must have been done awful crafty and still. They say it was such a funny way to kill a man, rigging it up all like that.
That's just what Mr. Hale said. There was a gun in the house. That's just what they can't understand.
Mr. Henderson said that what was needed for the case was a motive. Something to show anger or a sudden feeling.
Well, I don't see any signs of anger around here. It's wet to here. Wonder how they're finding things upstairs. You know, it seems kind of sneaking, locking her up in town and then just letting her own house turn against her.
But Mrs. Hale, the law is the law.
I suppose it is. Better loosen up your things, Mrs. Peters. You won't feel them when you go out.
Oh? She was piecing a quilt.
It's a log cabin pattern. Pretty, isn't it? I wonder if she was going to quilt it or just knot it.
I wonder if she was going to quilt it or just not it.
Frank's fire didn't do much upstairs, did it? Let's go out to the barn and let's clear that up.
I don't know, was there anything so strange, us taking up our time with little things while we're waiting for them to get the evidence?
Of course they've got awful important things on their minds.
Mrs. Peters, look at this. This was what she was working on. It's bad sewing. It's like she didn't know what she was about.
Oh, what are you doing, Mrs. Hale?
Just pulling out a stitch or two that's not sewn very good. Bad sewing always made me fidgety.
I don't think we ought to touch things.
I'll just finish up this end. Mrs. Peters,
Yes, Mrs. Hale?
what do you suppose she was so nervous about?
I don't know. I don't know if she was nervous. I sometimes do awful queer when I'm just tired. Well, I better get these things wrapped up. They may be through sooner than you think. I wonder where I can find a piece of paper and string.
In the cupboard, maybe.
Why, it's a bird cage. Did she have a bird, Mrs. Hale?
I don't know if she did. I've not been here for so long. But there was a guy selling canaries cheap here last year. I don't know if she took one. Maybe she did. She used to sing real pretty herself.
Seems funny to think of a bird here. But she must have had one, or why would she have a cage? I wonder what happened to it.
I suppose maybe the cat got it.
No, she didn't have a cat. She's got that feeling some people have about cats, being afraid of them.
My sister Bessie is like that. Queer, ain't it?
Why, look at this door. It's broke. One hinge is pulled apart.
Looks as if someone must have been rough with it.
Why, yes.
I wish if they're gonna find some evidence they'd be about it. I don't like this place.
But I'm awful glad you came with me, Mrs. Hale. It would be lonesome for me sitting here all alone.
It would, wouldn't it? But I tell you what I do wish, Mrs. Peters. I wish I had come over when she was here. I wish I had.
But you were awful busy, Mrs. Hale. Your house and your children.
I know, but I could have come. I never liked this place. It's a lonesome place and it always has. I wish I had come over to see Minnie Foster sometimes. I can see now.
Well, you mustn't reproach yourself, Mrs. Hale. Somehow we just don't see how it is with other folks until something comes up.
Well, not having children makes less work, but it makes a more quiet place. With John Wright out to work all day and no company when he did come in. Did you know John Wright, Mrs. Peters?
Not to have known him. They say he was a good man.
Yes, good. He didn't drink, he kept his word as well as most, and he paid his debts. But he was a hard man, Mrs. Peters. Just to pass the time of day with him. Ugh, like a raw wind that gets to the bone. I think she should have wanted a bird. But what do you suppose went with it?
I don't know. Unless it got sick and died.
You weren't raised around here, were you? You didn't know her?
Not till they brought her yesterday.
Come to think of it, she was kind of like a bird herself. Real, sweet and pretty, but kind of timid and fluttery. How she did change. Tell you what, Mrs. Peters, why don't you bring in this quilt with you? It might take up her mind.
Why, that's a great idea, Mrs. Hale. There couldn't be any objection to it now, could there? Now, just what would I take?
Here's some white. I suppose maybe there's some sewing things in it. What a pretty box. Looks like something somebody would give you. Maybe your sisters are in here. There's something wrapped up in this piece of cloth.
Why, this isn't her scissors.
Mrs. Peters, it's...
It's the bird.
Oh, but look at its neck. Its neck, Mrs. Peters, it's all other side too.
Somebody wrong its neck.
Well, ladies, have you decided whether she was going to quilt it or not?
We think she was going to knot it.
Well, that's interesting for sure. Has the bird flown? We think the cat got it. Is there a cat?
Well, not now. They're superstitious, you know. They leave.
She liked that bird. She was going to bury it in that pretty box.
When I was a girl, my kitten, there was a boy who took a hatchet, and before my eyes, and before I could even get there, if they hadn't held me back, I would have hurt him.
I wonder how it would seem never to have children around. No, John Wright wouldn't like the bird, a thing that sang. She used to sing. He killed that too.
We don't know who killed that bird.
I knew John Wright.
It was an awful thing that was done in this house that night, Mrs. Hale. Killing a man while he slept, slipping the rope around his neck and choked the life out of him.
His neck choked the life out of him.
We don't know who did it. We don't know.
If there had been years and years of nothing than a bird to sing to you, it would be awful. Still, after the bird was still.
I know what stillness is. When we homesteaded in Dakota, and my first baby died after he was 2 years old.
How soon do you suppose they'll find the evidence?
I know what stillness is. The law has got to punish crime, Mrs. Hale.
I wish you'd seen Minnie Foster when she was wearing blue ribbons and white dresses and singing in the choir, being lively. I wish I'd come over here once in a while. That was a crime. That was a crime. Who's going to punish that?
We mustn't take on.
I might have known she needed help. I know how things can be for women. If I were you, I wouldn't tell her food was gone. Tell her it ain't. Take this in to prove it to her. She will never know that her fruit is all gone.
I'm glad the men couldn't hear us. Wouldn't they just laugh, getting stirred up over a little thing like a dead cannery? As if it has anything that could do with... Wouldn't they just laugh?
Maybe they would. Maybe they wouldn't. No, Peters. It's all perfectly clear, except for the reason of doing it. But you know juries when it comes to women. There should be this certain thing. Something to show, something to make a story about, something that would connect the strange way of doing it.
Well, got a team around. Pretty cold out there.
I will stay here for a while by myself. You can send Frank out for me, can't you? I want to go over everything. I am not satisfied that we can't do better.
Do you want to see what Mrs. Peters is going to take in?
Well, I don't think there are very dangerous things the ladies have picked up. No, Mrs. Peters doesn't need supervising. For that matter, the sheriff's wife is married to the law. Ever think of it that way, Mrs. Peters?
Not just that way.
Married to the law. I just want you to come in here a minute, George. We ought to take a look at these windows.
Oh, windows.
We'll be right out, Mr. Hale.
Well, at least you found out she was not going to quilt it. She was going to what do you call it, ladies?
She was going to knot it, Mr. Henderson.
Tagal dyan ah.